today is to talk about transcription. Okay, transcription. The word's right here. The word is, let me get my annotation ready. The word is transcription. Oh, it's already, yep. The word's right here. Transcription. Now, transcription comes from the word transcribe. Okay, transcribe. It means to change something to something else. Transcribe means to change something to something else. All right? So that's where the word transcription comes from. We will talk about all the enzymes, all the proteins that are involved in in transcription as well. All right? So let's start. Now, we all know by now that the genes that you look the way you do is because of the genes you have. We have about 10,000 genes, a lot of genes for humans. All different species have different number of genes. Now, we know that these genes are carried in by nucleotides, and we call that DNA. So it's DNA, okay? This is what DNA looks like. And we have 46 of these, okay? We have 46 of these chromosomes, okay? And they're DNA, deoxyribose nucleic acid, okay? Now, the genes are located on here by the order of the nucleotides. Wow, the nucleotides, if you've forgotten, it's thymine, adenine, A for adenine, G for guanine, and C for cytosine. So there are 4 bases, TAGC, and that's what makes up our DNA, deoxyribose. Now, and they are found inside the nucleus of all cells. Yeah, it varies depending on if it's body cells or sex cells. Okay, sex cells would be half the number. Body cells would be 46 chromosomes. That you guys know that. Okay, now to carry out the production of these genes for your body, for your cells, for your body to create these, to express these genes that you carry, to make your hair black, to make your skin a certain way, for your bones, all the cells of your body. There has to be a conversion, okay? And we call this transcription, okay? So DNA is not recognized by the enzymes of your cells, okay? DNA is the genetic information, hereditary information of cells, but it is not recognized by the enzymes. It is not recognized by the enzyme. It's kind of like this. In America, the letters, we use the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C through Z, right? That's how we understand conversation. That's how we understand when we text each other, when we email. Now, what if I were to give you computer language, ones and zeros? Computer language is ones and zeros, okay? That's how you do coding. Now, unless you have knowledge with computer coding, then you understand the ones and zeros. Now, I don't understand ones and zeros. Okay, are we good? We good with that? Okay, so DNA, people, is this. DNA is this. DNAs are the code that your enzymes do not understand. But it carries the message to create the proteins your body needs so you can have your cleft chin, you can have your black hair, you can have your brown skin, things like that. Now, so DNA has to be transcribed into something else. Now, that information is called RNA. RNA is the genetic information. It's also DNA. It's also genetic information, but it's slightly different. Okay, instead of these ones and zeros like in computers, RNA are the letters of the alphabet. Okay, A through Z. Okay, A through Z. A through Z, the letters of the alphabet. You and I understand. That's how we communicate. Are the letters A through Z. Now that would be RNA. Now there are a few things different and few things that are the same between DNA and RNA. DNA is these codes. RNA are the letters that you and I comprehend. And I wrote a little note here. Our enzymes don't recognize DNA. Instead, they understand RNA. Now, then RNA, this is another chapter, okay? This is another lesson for next week. RNA then translates into protein. So for you to produce the protein for the blood, your skin, your muscles, right? This is my arm. I took a Photoshop of my arm the other day, and I put it up. Now, I don't look that big here, but I'm just kidding. I wish, right? I wish my biceps were this big. Maybe David's biceps. Maybe. Nate's bicep, okay? But you see, my point is, people, see, out of all the cells that make up you and I, our body, it gets old. And these muscles and these blood cells and these skin cells, they get old after so many days, weeks, months, and they need to be replaced. So to replace and repair these cells, you need protein. And where do you get the protein? You get the protein from DNA. But since your enzymes do not recognize DNA, you need to change it to RNA. Then your enzymes recognize RNA. The RNA are going to make the protein. Guys, does that make sense? So RNA is the magic, is the real magic. Now, I'm not saying that DNA is not. DNA is the genetic information. But RNA is also the genetic information and it's the comprehensible information. Now, so let's look at the process. I'm going to clear this up. Now, so here's the same diagram. Oops, I have something else. Yeah. Okay, now it's going. Okay, so now here I have the exact same diagram. So this is DNA replication, and it occurs inside the nucleus. Now, why do you have replication? It's so that you can make copies of your DNA, so that your cells can divide. DNA is transcribed or translation, that's the process, into RNA. Your cells are able to understand RNA. Your enzymes are able to understand RNA. This is the objective today, is to understand this part right here. This is what we're gonna learn. Okay, let me make it a little bigger. Okay, so the objective is this whole thing, not RNA. We talked about RNA already. We're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about how DNA becomes RNA, and this process is called transcription. Okay, now we will talk about this in another lesson. Somebody sent me a text. Okay, Derek, go get what you need and come back. Okay, Derek, go get what you need and come back. Okay, if you need something, you gotta go get what you need. Okay, so I'm gonna continue, people. I'm gonna continue. So we're gonna talk about this now. What does transcription do? Transcription changes DNA into RNA messages. Okay, now, so our focus, people, is not about number one. We talked about number one already. We're going to talk about number two, okay? I'll talk about number three next Tuesday, okay? That's translation. So the focus is on transcription, okay, transcription. Now, so before I go into the process of transcription, let's talk about what is RNA, right? RNA stands for ribonucleic acid. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid, okay? Now, RNA has three major parts. Part number one is RNA is made of a sugar. Instead of deoxyribose, like DNA, it's made of a sugar called ribose. Here is DNA. So I put the DNA here as a comparison so that you don't forget, okay? Just in case the exam asks you for it, and so you have, at least you have, okay? So RNA has a sugar called ribose, sugar. That's where the R comes from. R represents ribose, nucleic acid, okay? That's where the ribose. Now, DNA, the reason why it's D is because of D. This D here, deoxyribo. Deoxyribo is the sugar, the name of the sugar for DNA. Now, RNA, remember that DNA has the nucleotides, ATGC, right? A, adenine, thymine, guanine, G for guanine, and then cytosine, right? But RNA, it doesn't have thymine. It does not have thymine. Instead of thymine, it has a base called uracil. So RNA has these bases. It has A for adenine. It has U for uracil. It has G, just like guanine, just like DNA, and it has cytosine. So what what's wrong with that is your enzymes do not recognize this guy. It doesn't recognize what a U is, or I'm sorry, what a T. It doesn't recognize the T. Okay, it doesn't recognize the T. So what happened is, okay. So what happened is the T is not recognized by your enzymes. So therefore, the T is deleted, replaced with a U, uracil. Now, once it changes to uracil, this message AUGC is understood by your cell, your enzymes, and understands it. Now, third thing. Now, DNA is double helix, right here, double helix. DNA is double helix, okay? And it contains adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, right? But RNA is only a single. RNA is a single strand, right? And it contains adenine, it contains guanine, it contains cytosine, no thymine. It contains U for uracil. It has uracil. And here, DNA has a T, replaced with a U. The nucleotides, just like DNA, it has 4 nucleotides. They are A nucleotide, U nucleotide, G nucleotide, and C nucleotide. And the nucleotides are identical to DNA. It has a phosphate, a sugar. The sugar is different. Instead of deoxyribose, it has a ribose sugar. And then it has a base. So this base is uracil, U for uracil. So that's the difference between those minor differences. Prevents the cell from understanding DNA. Just those minor changes. Now, why, right? Why? There has to be a reason why. The reason is to check, to make sure that there's no error in transcription. So by making DNA convert to RNA, it creates another checkpoint. So instead of your cells just understanding DNA, it could make a mistake. And so you would create genes that are abnormal to your body, to humans. So by forcing another extra step, your cells, it checks for mistakes. So it goes from DNA to RNA. And during that transition to RNA, your cells check to make sure there is no error. Okay, guys, we good? That's why you look around, you look at, you watch TV, you have friends, your family, you look at your classmates. You don't see humans with 3 eyes, right? 3 eyes. You don't see humans with 3 ears. You don't see humans with weird traits that's very abnormal. Humans, we tend to be very similar because we're complex and there's a lot of checkpoints in animals. In you and I, animal cells, especially humans, there's a lot of checkpoints to avoid these mistakes versus bacteria. Bacterias, they don't have this checkpoint. They don't have, some bacterias, they don't have DNA, they have RNA. See, so therefore they can go from RNA to protein, like that. Because of that, they lose that checkpoint, and so therefore bacteria are more likely to mutate, have errors than animals and plants. Okay, are we good? All right. Okay, so let's move on to the players. Who are the players in transcription? Now, inside cells, when your cells are ready to make a protein, let's say, for example, I burn my skin, right? I was cooking some egg rolls for all of you, right? And then I burn my skin. Now, my skin needs to be replaced, okay? I get a big bubble, you know what I'm talking about? A big sack, and there's water inside, and it itch. You know what I'm talking about? How many of you have been burned? So you know what I mean, okay? You get a sack. Now, these cells that was burned when I was frying the egg roll, they need to be removed. They need to be replaced with my cells. My body needs to make cells. Now, to make these cells, my cells, they The second type of RNA is called ribosomal RNA. to make skin because I burned myself. Your body has to make 3 types of these just to make skin cells, just to make skin protein. Now, each of these RNAs, they have a task to do. The messenger is the RNA that carries the message, okay? This is the messenger, just like what the word means, literally what it means. The messenger RNA carries the code to make the protein for my skin. The ribosomal RNA is the RNA that is going to make the protein. It's kind of like the supervisor, okay? The supervisor. Now, the transfer RNA is going to go around the cell and look for food. It's going to look for food. It's going to look for supplies so that you can make your protein. Does that make sense? So I'll do it again. Messenger RNA carries the message to make my skin that I just got burned. The ribosomal RNA is the one that does the work. It's the supervisor. It's the worker, the laborer. The transfer RNA is another worker that goes around the cells and look for food, look for supplies, so they can bring it to the ribosomal RNA so that you can put it together so that you can make skin cell. Okay, we got it? Now, what if, let's say, I was riding my bike and I fell and I broke my bone, fractured my bone. I broke my bone. My bone needs to be repaired. Then, inside my DNA, it would make 3 RNAs. Messenger RNA for bone cells, protein. It would make a ribosomal RNA for bones. It would make a transfer RNA for bones. So every time you need a certain protein, your body, your cells make 3 RNAs. These 3 are going to work together. They work together to repair your body. Now, once my skin is repaired, the burn is repaired, those 3 RNAs, they are broken up. They might be recycled, or if your body does not need it anymore for a certain period of time, then it goes out of the cell, and then it goes to the blood system, and when you do your business, number 2, you pee, it comes out. Does that make sense? Okay, so, like your vision, right? Your vision, we need vision. Some people go blind later on in life, right? Some people go blind. The reason is because there are many reasons, but one reason is because their body does not produce the protein to make the vision possible for that person. So you need all 3 of these to work together so that you can see. Now, so what do they look like, right? The heck do they look like? So messenger RNA looks like this. This is your messenger RNA. It carries the message. It carries the message. Now, what is this? This is a single-stranded DNA. Now, each of these represents nucleotides. So here, this could be an A. This could be a C. This could be a C. This could be a G. This is an A. This is a U. Remember, there's no more. This is another U. There's no T, okay? Because RNA does not have any T's. This is an A. This is a C. This is a C. This is a U. You see what I'm doing? This is a single-stranded RNA. This sequence of the letters is the message that creates the skin, the protein for the skin. Now, what does the ribosome RNA looks like? This is what they look like. It's composed of 2 parts, the small subunit and the large. The large subunit, I'm going to use the letter L. Large subunit and the small subunit. The 2 subunits, what they do is, here is my messenger, my palm, 1, 2. It grabs onto it. Ribosomal, grabs onto it. And then what happened is, this is the worker. It's going to make this protein. So this is only the code, the message to make the skin protein. This is the worker. It's composed of 2 subunits, the large and the small. And it does the work. It makes the protein. This is the messenger, okay? This is the transfer, which is it goes get food. You see this part right here? This part is the supplies. So he travels around the cell and finds food, supplies, and it brings it over to the ribosome. This guy brings it over to this guy. So he brings it over to this guy and then gives him the food. Here's the food. Make your protein. Here's the food. I'm going to go get something else. Here's the food. Make your essay. Here is the calculator. Calculate your problem. You see what I'm doing? So the transfer RNA job is to go get supplies and bring it to, this guy will bring it to him so that you can make the protein. So this RNA is the code message. This guy does the work. This guy goes and gets supplies inside the cell. Now, where do you get the supplies from? Where do you get, how do you have supplies inside cells? It's from the food that you and I eat. Got it? The food that you and I eat. If you eat crappy food, if you eat bad food, if you eat processed food, will your supplies be good? Right? It's not good. If you buy your equipment, let's say, I'll give you an example. What's a good, what is a good earbud brand? What is a good brand? What is a good brand? Okay, what's a good brand? Earbud. Okay, Sony. Okay, Tamiya said Sony. Now, Sony is a good brand. I mean, they've been around for a long time. Now, is Apple another good brand? Apple, yes, good brand. Now, what if I go on Amazon and I buy some cheapo $10 earbuds? $10. Is that good? No. Most likely, it's not going to last very long. See my point? So when you eat bad food that's processed, you have bad supplies to make the protein. When you eat healthy food, organic food that is less processed, you have better supplies so that you can make the protein. So there's a saying, you are what you eat, right? You are what you eat because this food that you consume, whatever it is you consume, it is used to make whatever it is your body needs to stay alive. All right? So everyone okay with the RNAs? Now, so how does the process work? Let's put them all together. Okay, so transcription requires catalyzed by enzyme. Catalyze means to carry out. That's what it means. So here is your DNA, guys. Here's your DNA, blue. Here's your DNA. And this region here, contains a gene. Let's say the gene is for skin, S-K-I-N. This is me. I got a burn, remember, I got a burn. The gene is from here to here, okay? The gene is from here to there, okay? So what happened is, an enzyme inside the cell, inside the nucleus, we call RNA polymerase, right here, RNA polymerase. It goes to the gene, the chromosome where the gene for skin is located, and it attaches it to it. So this thing right here is RNA polymerase. Once it attached, the double helix opens up, okay? The double helix opens up. And then nucleotides, ATGCs, would fly in. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake, guys. It should be you. My bad. Okay? It should be you. I'm sorry. Okay? AUGC, okay? Because we're talking about RNA nucleotides. Let me type in RNA nucleotides. Okay, so here's your DNA, and then you have AUGC RNA nucleotides. They're free floating outside, and they come from the food that you and I eat. Then what happened is, using one of the strand as a template, it starts making the messenger RNA, which is the message, okay? Now, how does it know? How does this RNA polymerase, how does this enzyme know where a gene starts? It knows it here. Change color. This region, it's called the promoter. The promoter region is right here. The promoter is right here, P for promoter. In front of every single gene, is a region. and this region is always the same. And we call this region the promoter. The promoter is the start of every single gene. Guys, got it? If you have 10,000 genes, you have 10,000 promoters. Because in front of the gene, let's say if this is the gene, in front of the gene is a region called the promoter. At the end of the gene is called a stop. Okay? Stop, promoter. So after this region, there might be no genes. And then let's say this is another gene. Okay? This is another gene. That means that right here would be the P for promoter. The promoter would be in the front again. And it repeats. And then move on to the next slide. Here is the RNA polymerase moving across the gene. It's moving across. Notice how only one strand is being used as a template. Notice how this strand is being made, manufactured with the help of free-floating nucleotides and RNA polymerase as it moves across. Notice how it starts here, right? Because this is the start of the gene. Now, it keeps on making this single strand. This is the messenger RNA. Remember, the messenger RNA is carries the message to make whatever gene it is, right? And then it continues to open up. The RNA polymerase opens up the DNA. It unwinds it, pulls it apart, by the way. And then it continues. Now, when does it stop? It stops when it gets to a stop, what we call the end of the gene. So the transcription would continue until it gets to the end of the gene, which is, let's say, here. That's where it stops. It stops because there's a certain sequence in the DNA that tells the enzyme, hey, this is where the gene stops. So everything breaks up. This is your messenger RNA. This message contains the code to make the protein. Now, what happened to the transfer RNA? What about the ribosomal RNA? Another process also occurs similar to this. So we have three RNAs. We have the messenger RNA. What about the ribosomal RNA? Where does it come from? It also comes from the DNA. It is also made, but it's not shown here. What about the transfer RNA? It's also made, just like the messenger. The transfer RNA is also made. So all three RNAs must be made. Same exact process. So here you have DNA, right? This is your DNA. And, oh, it's not very clear. DNA, and then it makes what? RNA. It makes RNA. This carries the code and then there's a stop codon that triggers the end. Everything breaks off. Now, can you recycle the RNA polymerase? Yes. Enzymes can be recycled, guys. Okay? Enzymes can be recycled. And then this RNA polymerase then moves into the cytoplasm and it just waits. It just waits. When you get burned again. Then it activates again. It starts making the messenger again. It goes into the nucleus. It finds the gene for your skin and it makes more. And the process repeats. Now, once you have made the messenger RNA, the ribosomal RNA, and the transfer RNA, three of these, they slowly move out into the cytosol, which is the cytoplasm. Now, but the messenger RNA requires some modifications, okay? The messenger RNA requires modifications. Now, here is your messenger RNA. Here's your messenger RNA, which carries the message. Remember that, to make the protein, right? Now, and it's made inside this is your DNA, right? Remember that? Here's your DNA, which is the genetic information, carries the gene. Then transcription to RNA. This is your RNA. This is your messenger RNA. Also your transfer and your ribosomal RNA. It's still in the nucleus. But before the RNA can move into the cytosol, which is cytoplasm, something has to happen for the messenger. Now, here's the single-stranded messenger RNA. Now, the message is not mature. It's not complete. It is divided up into sections called exons and introns. Exons, introns, exons. Now, these are regions. Now, imagine on here there's U's, A's, and C's, and G's, okay? Now, this section C's and C's and C's. And so the nucleotides are on here. This is single-stranded, okay? Single-stranded. What happened is, before this messenger RNA can move into the cytosol, what happened is you have to remove the introns, okay? You see the introns? You got to get rid of the introns. You have to get rid of the introns. You have to get rid of the introns. Introns are segments of RNA that's just junk. It's kind of like proofreading. So what happened is, inside the nucleus, there's an enzyme. And this enzyme is splices. That means it cuts. It cuts right here. 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 What happened is, by cutting here, 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 and there, it creates these pieces. This trash, recycle. This piece, that piece, and this piece reconnects. And here. This is a mature processed piece of messenger RNA. Then this piece prepares to travel out into the cytosol. It travels out. Now, it has a long journey traveling out of the nucleus into the cytosol. So what happened is, for protection, a cap is added to the front of the messenger RNA. The front gets a cap, CAP. It also produces a tail. The tail contains adenine. A long tail is attached to the back. Now, why does it do that? So here is my piece of messenger RNA, right? A cap is added to the front. A cap is added to the front. Mickey Mouse. Added to the front. The cap is added to the front for protection. A tail is added to the rear. My tail is added to the rear. What does the tail do? It swings. It propels. It propels outside. So the poly A tail, see this poly A tail? It propels. It moves this messenger RNA out. The tail made of adenine. Think of a sperm cell. A sperm cell. It moves it out. This is the tail. It moves out. It wiggles. It moves out. To prevent the messenger from hitting some other organelle, it has a cap. The cap in the front. The cap in the front protects it from. It's kind of like a helmet to protect it from hitting something. So the cap is made of a certain sequence. Usually it's G. The A, poly A, is made of A. That's how we know. We know that this inside, in between the cap and the poly A tail, is your message. This contains the message to make skin inside the cytoplasm. Guys, does that make sense? Now, what happened to the transfer RNA? What happens to the ribosomal RNA? Because you need all three, right? Because this is the message. What about the transfer? The transfer RNA does not go through something like this. It doesn't have to, because it doesn't carry the message. It doesn't carry the message. So it doesn't need a tail. It doesn't need a cap. This just travels straight out into the cytoplasm. What about the ribosomal RNA? rRNA, right? Where is it? The two subunits. Where are they? They're made just like the messenger RNA, but they move out of the They're move out of. So you see this part right here. This part right here is the ribosomal RNA. This right here is the messenger. This line right here is the messenger. Okay, that's the messenger. That's the ribosomal. It's holding on to the messenger, and the transfer RNA is coming. It's bringing food to the supplies to the messenger, so they can make protein. Now, when does it stop? When your skin is healed. When your burn is healed. Everything breaks up, gets recycled, goes into the trash. You do number 2, you pee it out, and the cycle repeats if you get another burn. That's how it works. Now, what does it look like under a microscope? Yeah. DNA, guys. This is your DNA. Look at the activity. Look at how much messenger RNAs. Look at all the RNAs growing. Now, so for you and I to stay healthy, look at the amount of RNAs growing from the DNA. So the DNA is right here. The DNA is right here. The strand of DNA is right here. That's your DNA. That's your strand of DNA, people. That's your strand of DNA. That's your strand of DNA. Look how much, look at all the messenger RNAs coming out from it. Here is your DNA. There's another DNA. You see what I'm doing? So, transcription is occurring non-stop, people, because your body needs protein all the time. Repeat. So, the two process have very similar traits. Here's transcription. I just explained transcription. What about replication? Replication, the process of making copies of all of your DNA. So the similarity and the differences is replication makes copies of the entire genome. That means all of your DNA, because you need to divide the cell. What about transcription? It only makes one gene, a single gene. Whatever your cell needs, it turns on. Now, as you get older, this process slows down. This process, it makes mistakes. So therefore, as you get older, you're more likely to develop diseases. Your body does not recover as quickly. You break your bone, it doesn't take 6 months. It might take years. When you're sick, you don't recover. You see what I mean? Transcription. You need transcription to make the proteins to heal your body. But when you're old, it doesn't work. When you're sick, that's why when you look at your parents, when they get sick, when they get, let's say, a cold, it's like weeks for them to recover. You see them suffer. But when you get a cold, 2 days, you're done. You see what I mean? 2 days, you're done. You are a beast in 2 days. It's no problem. Because one of the reasons is because of transcription. It's slow as you get older. And also, remember, telomeres, okay? Telomeres. As you get older, your enzymes they don't listen. Now, another similarity and difference between replication and transcription. In replication, you only make one copy of your DNA because your cell's dividing, right? You only make one copy of all your DNA. But in transcription, if you look at these examples here, you don't make just one protein of your skin. When you get a burn, your cells, your DNA might make 1 million proteins of skin, 1 million copies, not just one. See what I mean? 1 million. Because how many proteins of skin do you need? I don't know how many, but it got to be in the millions and billions of protein to heal my burn. People, that is lesson 1 of chapter 14. How we doing, guys? How we doing? I hope that makes sense to you. I'll give you an example, okay? Another example. You know how men, they go bald? Yes? They go bald, right? When you're young, all the men in here. Now, for the ladies, think of your brothers and your dad, okay? Not all men. This happens not to all men, but a lot of men, right? Men who go bald, when they are young, they have lots of hair. I mean, hair, rock star hair here. But as they get older, you notice how the hair recedes? Yes, the hair recedes, it thins out. And then sometimes they lose hair here, sometimes here, sometimes back here, sometimes everywhere, right? In their 20s. Why? It's because transcription to make protein for hair stops. It stops. So because it stops, your hair cannot grow anymore. So you lose we're talking about a matter of weeks, months, you lose patches of hair because your body is not producing proteins for hair anymore in your scalp. So therefore, you go bald. is one reason where we can all relate to. Okay, guys, are we good? Now, do are men the only people that loses hair? No, women do it too. But women, it's very rare. For women, it's a genetic problem, genetic disease. I've seen women with losing hair. They wear wigs, but it's rare. But for men, it is more of a common thing. Okay, because it's for men. It has to do with your sex chromosome.